Good evening and welcome to Know Before You Grow, a subcommittee of Petaluma Urban Chat. I'm Dan Like, and as always, many thanks to Dave Alden and Sharon Kirk for doing all of the work. Basic announcements. We have been Zoom bombed in the past. We will be Zoom bombed in the future. If things get weird, hang on the line. And if you get booted, try to come back in. And if I'm not letting you in, please check the chat. Also, the usual warnings about the Brown Act, but we've gone over that so many times. Everybody knows the deal. We have a couple of tentative Know Before You Grow sessions coming up, but nothing that is firm enough to announce, except that we are expecting to have Charles Marin, the leader of Strong Towns and author of the book recently, Confessions of a Recovering Engineer, which I highly recommend, and which I should at least make sure I lend to the people who've asked for it and get them to you after that. In town for a presentation the evening of June 15th. And if you would like to join this motley crew and help us with organization and such, we are also gathering at Aqua's Cafe on noon on May 26th, which alas, I will not be at, to plan future gatherings and discuss whatever is interesting to discuss around the topics of growth and municipal finance and mobility and all of those things. And on the topic of mobility, this evening we have Eddy Cumins, the general manager of SMART. And rather than give a super long intro to him, I'm just going to pass it over to Eddy because he's better at that than I am. Oh, one other thing. Let's in the chat session, if you all can kind of drop your questions in there and get me ready to go, I would appreciate that. And I'd appreciate if we can kind of keep the chat discussion on narrowing down and honing those questions, because if I'm trying to keep up with things, I really want to pay attention to the presentation. With that, over to you, Eddy. Floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I think I'll start by sharing my screen here.
Hopefully I have turned that on.
Can you see my screen okay?
Looks fantastic here.
Awesome.
Yes. Thank you.
Great. So I thought maybe you might want me to do an introduction, so I think I'll start with that. So I'll do a quick introduction, then I wanted to just talk a little bit about our ridership. I wanted to kind of hone in on SMART in Petaluma, talk about the pathway, the trestle, first and last mile solutions, the Petaluma North Station, a little bit about freight. And then I wanted to spend some time talking about planning for the future. That's a lot of the work that the board and I have been doing, and I think that it answers really a lot of questions that are out there in the community. So I wanted to hit on that. And then of course, at the end, I'll open it up for questions. But a little bit about me. I grew up in small town, Oklahoma, a town of about 1,000 people. I joined the military, Air Force, when I was 18 years old. Served 20 years. And during that time, I had an opportunity to serve all over the world. I was in California, Alaska, the Azores, Utah, Japan is where I finally retired. And of course, I had opportunities to visit those nice locations like South Korea, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq in my time. So I've been around, been to a lot of different places, got to see a lot of different things. I retired in 2011. I started work at the Utah Transit Authority. That's where my wife and I retired, was in Utah. I started as the maintenance manager. I worked my way up to the regional general manager, where I ran the bus system and was kind of the political point of contact for the Utah Transit Authority in the 3 northern counties in the service area. And from there, I was in that role about 5 years. And then the last 3 years at UTA, I was the chief operating officer. And so really a lot of experience there, you know, very much multimodal. And so I have the rail background, the bus background, and I think that that's going to prove very beneficial in my role here at SMART. Happy to be here. Love Sonoma and Marin County. You know, this is a place that my wife and I used to vacation. So when I got the phone call from the recruiter, they absolutely had my attention. So very happy to be here. But with that, let's talk a little bit about ridership. So these are just some of the things, kind of setting the stage here. These are kind of some of the things on my mind. Many of you have probably heard that we are bringing back service on June 13th, adding an additional 10 trips a day. And this is kind of some of that information that's driving that. 56% of employers report they're already bringing back non-essential workers, and 70% of employers predict that the new normal, we'll see new normal operations by this summer. So we want to make sure that we're prepared for that. But there's also some things that we need to be aware of. Number one, 43% of employers anticipate workers are coming to the office 3 days per week. So instead of 5 days per week like we saw pre-COVID, looks like it's probably going to be a shortened work week. Employers are reporting that 62 to 63% of the workforce will work Tuesday through Thursday schedule. Percentage of workers expected to work in the office on Monday is below 50%. And Fridays have remained the least popular. I don't understand that, but that's what they're saying. Fridays are the least popular day to work. And then only 42% of employees are expected to work the traditional 9 to 5 schedule. So we take a look at our ridership, and when this is over the past 4 weeks, looking at our ridership, and this is something that Emily and I look at and talk about all the time, we have seen that dip on Mondays, but Fridays is not ringing true. Fridays is relatively consistent, with other days of the week. You can see in there the week 411 was actually one of our higher days. So it's just been very interesting to kind of watch this dynamic as time goes on. So this is how our ridership has looked. This is looking at average boardings per day. You can see if you go back and look at March, we're at 1,388 a day. That jumped to 1,420 in April. And currently in May, we're at 1,438. And what this chart, just to kind of orient you with this chart, this is considering FY20, FY21, and FY22 is the blue. And so this was very interesting. It's becoming less and less productive to look at the data this way. But the way we were talking about it just a few months ago was how we were doing compared to COVID, right, or pre-COVID. And now we're kind of above that. And so this slide's making less and less sense, but still it shows that we are continuing to make some progress. This is a slide that I absolutely love. It's looking at our ridership since January. You can see from January to February, ridership jumped 21%, jumped another 18% in March, and then it was up another 4% in April. So when we bump our April ridership number against January, ridership is up 48%. So we're absolutely making progress. This is something else that we recently implemented, excuse me, but this is showing a rolling 12-month average. In transit, there's some months that you have 22 days, 22 weekdays. Sometimes you have 21, sometimes 23. It's kind of all over the place. So sometimes it's very difficult to tell whether you're actually making progress. But when you look at a rolling 12-month average, it kind of shows. And so if you go back over the past 12 months, you can see that we've just had this steady growth in ridership. And you can see it was quite a significant jump between month 11 and 12 there, which was April. So very happy to see this. And our focus right now is on making sure that we continue with this. And I think as we implement more service, provide more frequency, I think that's exactly what we're going to see. So what are our challenges? Bottom line, traffic volume's already at 90% of pre-pandemic. And our April ridership was 53% of pre-pandemic. So we still have a long way to go. And then, of course, when we think about how do we improve our system, we have to think we have 8 different North Bay transit agencies that we have to coordinate with and work with as we move through this process. Excuse me. Post-pandemic keys to success: add service to meet demand. That's number one. That's what we're doing. We're seeing demand go up. We are hearing about issues with bike storage on the trains. There are some trains that are relatively full. So these are great problems to have. These are the ones we've been waiting for. And so adding this service in June, I think it's going to level load some of those loads, and it's going to help us out. Flexibility, right? We don't know what the new normal is going to look like. We can look at data, we can think about it, but we have to remain flexible. We have to see what this new normal looks like. I think travel patterns have already changed. I think they may continue to change. We need to be prepared for that, and we need to be flexible, nimble, and have the ability to make adjustments when we need to make adjustments. We want to focus on system improvements. connections, first and last mile. Anybody that's heard me speak, you've heard me say it, SMART's Achilles heel is the first and last mile. And a lot of transit agencies say that when they focus on first and last mile, but it really is a huge challenge for us here at SMART, and something that we need to work on and continue to improve. Want to focus on ease of use, things like wayfinding, making sure that we're getting information out there, our system makes sense, people know how to pay their fare, all of those things, but really making the system easy to use, easy to navigate, easy to travel. And then I think as you look at that, knowing that the new normal is potentially a 3-day work week, we need to look at non-commuter markets. Emily and I, just this morning, we're talking about, some ideas of how to tap into that tourist market. But that is one that I think is one that is ripe, and one that we should be focused on. And there's others, but definitely I think that we have to think beyond the typical 9 to 5 commuter, because, like I said, times have changed. So talking about pathways just a little bit, start with South Point Boulevard to Penn Grove, 2.7 miles of pathway. It's in the final stage of design and permitting. Construction has been funded by the Active Transportation Program funds, and we're estimating construction starting in the spring of 2023. And this project will be composed of a 120-foot bridge, pedestrian crossings at South Point Boulevard, McDowell Boulevard, Corona Road, and Eli Road. Pathway Payran to South Point Boulevard is 1.2 miles of pathway completed in 2019. It was available to the public until Caltrans began their highway widening project, but the proposed reopening is late 2022. Payran Street to South Point Boulevard. This completed pathway is comprised of 8-foot wide pathway, 2-foot wide shoulders, and fencing between the path and the railroad. Lakeville to Payran Street is 0.2 miles of pathway, finishing design phase, and permitting is planned to be completed within the next couple of months. Planning to construct project in the fall of 2022. And construction funding is provided by the FTA. It's a quick strike grant, and the project will be comprised of a multi-use pathway. We'll have to shift existing freight customers' track to accommodate the pathway, and then we'll have a pedestrian crossing at Payran Street. Lakeville to Water Street. I hear about this one quite a bit. Anytime I'm talking pathway, this is the one I get. What about our last 500 feet? I have our capital folks working on this one, trying to find us a solution, but it's roughly 500 feet of pathway, could potentially be added to the Lakeville Street and Payran Street project. Funding source is not yet found, we're working on it, and would complete a connection of roughly 4.1 miles of pathway from downtown Petaluma to Penn Grove. Will require the removal of existing freight track currently used by Hunt & Barons for car storage in order to construct this pathway. But for all those of you out there that are interested in this 500 feet of pathway, it is absolutely on my radar. We're working on it. And then this pathway Penn Grove to Petaluma, you can see the line. This is a great segment, and one that we are interested in getting completed. Petaluma Trestle. Lots going on with this one lately. It's been a lot of things in the news. Trestle's owned by SMART. It's run freight service. Freight service stopped here in 1994 due to the condition of the trestle. I don't know if everyone had the opportunity to read the article in the Argus Courier, but they highlighted our new freight manager, John Karush. He was one of the last, if not the last person to operate a train. This is a picture. He's operating this train that's in this picture going across the trestle. So we're not 100% confident that he was the absolute last person, but we know he was, excuse me, one of the last. And we are currently, I've had some meetings with the city, and we're currently exploring options with the city to talk about transfer of ownership. And, as we probably all know, the city has made this one of their priorities moving forward. So we're continuing to work through that. No announcement today, but continuing to work through that process. First and last mile solutions. So let's talk about things that are existing. Number one, we have 12 bike locker spaces at Petaluma Station. There's Petaluma Route 11, Petaluma Transit Route 11. East Washington serves the downtown Petaluma Station every 20 minutes during peak hour. And future solutions, bike share, we're hoping that launches this summer. Bike and pet access via the new pathway, segments on D Street and D Street improvements. And then potential on-demand shuttle or circulator, kind of working on some solutions there, talking with our partners about what that could potentially look like. But again, you'll hear me say it multiple times in this presentation, but first and last mile is one of my top priorities and something we're going to be working very hard on over the next year or two. Petaluma North Station, SMART submitted a TIRCP grant request for $10.1 million. This award will be announced in June of this year with implementation by FY23 or 24. And current SMART schedule is already built to include this service to Petaluma North, and it'll also be served by Petaluma Transit Route 2. I feel good about this one. I mean, I can't make an announcement. We won't know anything until June, but I just have a really good feeling that we're going to be successful on this one. Time will tell. But my gut feeling is I think we're going to be successful on this. I think it's a great project, and I think it has a lot of support. So anyway, we'll see what happens, see if I'm right or wrong, but I feel good about it. Talk about our current freight operations. We're currently contracting freight. So we took over starting on March 1st of 2022. Takes a little bit of time to get staff on, so we went with a contractor to run this service for us for up until June. We're currently working on getting people on board now. Our service right now is 2 round trips to Petaluma, to our Petaluma customers, and that runs after revenue service, after the revenue trains quit running at night. And then we do 2 round trips to California Northern Railroad to receive and deliver rail cars to and from the interchange. Also, the work that's going on out there is the weekly track inspections, making sure we're complying with FRA requirements, weekly locomotive servicing, track repairs, and the monthly on-track equipment servicing and repairs. So just all of that work that has to go on to make our freight operation successful. We're working really hard. Anybody that's been paying attention to freight knows that, one of the first decisions that was made was to no longer store the LPG tanker cars at our Shelville site. And, that was a financial hit. There's no other way to talk about it. And right now we do have an operating deficit. We're working really hard to close that gap. I truly believe that we have the best person in the country, John Carouche, running our freight division. He's out there, he's meeting with people, he's talking to folks, and he's already contacted 4 new potential customers. Again, it's one of those things where I'm not prepared to make an announcement today, but I feel really good about these conversations that we are going to potentially have new customers that we can announce in the near future. So we'll continue to work through that, but that is ultimately the key to success, is that we need to find new customers for our freight business. And John has also done a good job of establishing a working relationship with California Northern and the Union Pacific Railroads. Again, that's the key to making sure that we can continue to get more customers. So I want to shift gears just a little bit now and start talking about planning for the future. This has consumed a tremendous amount of my time. This is something that staff and I've been working on along with the board. It's been a lot of work, but I think that this is the right thing for us to be doing at this time, because I think it's going to point us in the right direction and ultimately help us achieve our goals that we want to achieve. I want to talk a little bit about our planning model. This is our strategic planning model. People that have been involved in this know that there's many different models. This was one I was familiar with in the past, and it's worked well for us. But it really started with the SWOT analysis, where the staff and I sat down and really identified what are our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This was an interesting exercise, and anytime I talk about this, I always want to commend staff, because anybody that's been a part of this knows that it really is it is really difficult to look in the mirror and be honest with yourself and really talk about the things that you're good at and those things that maybe you're not so good at and the things that you need to improve upon. But staff did a really great job. They took this serious, and I'll share that SWOT analysis with you on the next slide. From there, we started talking with the board about developing a mission and vision. They completed that recently. And then the board also identified our strategic objectives. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. This is where we are in the process right now. We're kind of in between objectives and goals. The reason for that is we wanted to get public comment. We wanted to get public feedback. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on, but we conducted a lot of listening sessions. We received a lot of emails. We had a survey, just got a lot of information back from people to kind of help us inform what those goals are going to be. From there, we will develop our strategy, we'll deploy our strategy. And then I think one of the most important elements of this model is monitoring performance. You have to have measures that measures your level of success, lets you know whether you're winning or losing. And so that is something that we'll be focused on in the coming year, of making sure that we are monitoring performance. We're reporting that to the board and the public and making sure that we are continuing to make progress. And if we're not, we'll adjust. And of course, all of that's focused back on achieving your ultimate results. I don't want to talk too much and ad-lib too much on the SWOT analysis, but I do want to go through it because I think it's critically important. Dedicated, highly skilled staff. I'm starting in strengths. Dedicated and highly skilled staff. I'm not just saying this. I've been in the transit business for quite some time. I am telling you, I'm telling the public, the staff here at SMART is top notch. They truly care about the system. They care about the customers. They care about the agency. They're highly qualified. We have a great organization here. Makes me confident because I know whatever goals and strategies we set, I feel like we have the team to achieve it. So, and I've told the board that. Set whatever goals you want. We have the team that can achieve it. We have a safe and reliable service. We have modern, comfortable trains, strong bidirectional commute patterns, which means we don't just have people going south in the morning. We have people going both directions, both north and south. Our infrastructure, we're a new system, so the infrastructure is in excellent condition. I'm thrilled at the bike and train synergy that we have. I mean, we had lots of bicycles in Utah on the front runner, but not like what I see here. So that's just awesome to see the number of bikes that I see on the train. It's incredible. And we've been successful at identifying and securing funds, and we have a strong organizational culture. When the team and I did this, we probably spent the most of our time in this next block, the weaknesses. This took a lot of conversation, and we really just spent a lot of time here. But number one, first and last mile connections. It's a weakness for us. I've said it before, it's Achilles heel of SMART, and absolutely a weakness and one that we need to work on. We're a single track system. That makes things difficult. There's only certain places that our trains can pass one another. So that really limits our ability. If something happens in the system, usually those problems will just cascade throughout the system, makes it very difficult to get back on track. It also is creating some challenges for us of keeping consistent clock face headways, right? So right now we're running 32 to hour and 4 minute headways. That makes it challenging to connect with bus when they're running, 15, 30 or 60 minute headways. And so that's one that we'll be working on, doing some studying this year in the budget. We put some money in there to look at that, to determine, is there adjustments we can make within the system we have, or do we actually need to get some additional double tracking so we have more passing sidings? But we'll be working through that because, again, I think it's important that we be able to run a clock-faced headway. Limited number of destination stations, public perception and local support. Hey, it is what it is, right? We all know, and I'll talk about it down in the threats, but we know that we need to get a sales tax. Our sales tax expires in 2029, and we know that not everybody loves SMART. So we're going to work on that. Minimal staffing levels with long hiring timeline, that's kind of an internal issue. Parking capacity and paid parking, just wanted to take a look at that. And, coming in, kind of being new with those new eyes, it was like everything was a priority. And I think that leads into our opportunities, is that there's the opportunity to improve our strategic direction and alignment, make sure everybody's focused on what we see as important as an agency, making sure all of our horsepower is pointed in that direction. I think we have opportunities with untapped markets. Those things I've already talked about a little bit: tourism, students, late night, recreation, and event service. I think we can improve wayfinding, our real-time information, apps, online presence. Again, that's kind of back to that ease of use thing. Improve first and last mile connections, increase interaction with public and community leaders. I think doing things like this, I've been out doing a lot of meetings lately, and I think that this is helpful and a big part of how we need to do things moving forward. Enhance marketing efforts to target key markets. And then we've also been, a lot of conversation about reactivating onboard amenities, those things like the Wi-Fi and the snack bar. Threats, future sales tax funding, right? That's number one. That's the big one. And it's also, something we need to be well aware of, is that we have well organized and funded opponents, right? It is what it is, and it's something we need to be aware of. Another one is extensions north of Windsor and east of Novato are not in the Plan Bay Area 2050 plan, which means that really limits our ability to compete for grants in the future. And ongoing litigation slowing projects, that has a lot to do with the pathways and some of slowing those projects down. Public trust and confidence, that kind of goes with public perception and local support, but it is a thing and something we need to be aware of. And then this work from home thing that's going to be part of the new normal is just something that, it's just nothing we ever thought we would deal with in transit, especially on the commuter rail side. I mean, that's always kind of been the bread and butter of the commuters. And so, this is going to absolutely create a challenge for us. Cyber attacks, something you always have to be aware of. And then, of course, nothing is getting any cheaper. So we always have to be aware of rising capital and operating cost. So this is something else I shared with the board before they created their mission and vision and identified our strategic objectives. I told them, everywhere I go, I get the same 10 to 12 questions over and over and over again. And I said, so to be honest with you, I think our strategic objectives lie somewhere within these questions that I continue to hear over and over and over again. Those questions are: what is SMART's plan to increase ridership? What is the status of the pathway? What is the holdup with the Windsor extension? How long until we get to Healdsburg and Cloverdale? Is SMART planning to go east? Why is SMART taking on freight? When will SMART add back additional weekday trips and Sunday service? Is SMART planning to electrify the train? Does SMART have a plan to improve wayfinding at stations and on the pathway? What are the long-term effects of the pandemic on ridership? And last but not least, what can be done about the gate downtime in San Rafael? Again, everywhere I go, same questions. And so I shared this with the board and said, again, I'm pretty confident that our strategic objectives lie somewhere within these questions. So the board took all this information and they created what we like to refer to now as the SMART House. So you can see that the foundation of our house are values: safety, integrity, stewardship, and continuous improvement. Our strategic objectives are the pillars to our house: ridership, pathways, extensions, and freight. The ceiling to our house is our mission statement: we connect communities. And what does that mean? It means that SMART provides safe, reliable, and environmentally responsible transportation options. And then the roof of our house is our vision statement: smarter transportation for a smarter future. And what that means is that SMART envisions an innovative transportation system that provides integrated mobility solutions, promotes sustainable growth, and enhances quality of life. So our SMART House. So what are our next steps? We have just finished up, solicit public feedback. We've conducted 4 listening sessions in the month of April. We also collected tons of surveys, and right now we are compiling that data and looking at everything. Matt Stevens, he was just in my office just about an hour ago telling me he's getting really close on the ridership, plans to have something to share with me in the morning. But we're continuing to make progress on that. And of course, we are going to use that information to develop our goals, make sure those are aligned with our objectives. We'll develop and deploy our strategy to achieve our goals and objectives. And then, as I said, we'll continue to monitor performance, and all of this will be focused on making sure that we achieve our desired results. Again, we acknowledge that we have a lot of work to do, but again, I also know that I have the team to pull it off. So I'm confident, I'm excited about the future, and just looking forward to keeping on going. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions you may have.
Yeah, we've had a couple come in. But first, thank you. I think you covered a lot of things, and I think at least one of the questions is going to have you go back to the slides a little bit. You might want to stop sharing for a moment so people can see your face in all of its glory as you answer the questions. There we go. So the first question came in fairly early, obviously, and you addressed it a little bit, but maybe we can talk more about how SMART is funded, what the economic benefit to the community is. The particular question is, what level of ridership do you need to break even, and what we need to do when sales tax revenue goes away? Obviously, we don't expect freeways to break even. In fact, we're losing money horrendously on those, especially versus the value they bring. So yeah, talk about how the train is funded and how you see it bringing general economic value to the community.
Well, that's a good question, and one that I probably ought to add that to the frequently asked questions, because I do get that question a lot. Is what is it? How many riders do you have to break even? And the truth is, it's never going to happen. I don't know of a transit system in the country that breaks even, right? It's one of those things. We absolutely have to have sales tax to continue on. The agency is going to have to be sales tax funded. I think it adds a lot of value to the community. I know that people can argue the point. I've had several conversations, especially with some of our opponents. They're like, "Oh, you're not making a dent in Highway 101 traffic." I think we are. I think our numbers are going to continue to grow. Again, I think that, we're allowing people to move around. We're allowing people to get to their jobs. We provide that mobility. I think that in the future, as development continues to happen, I think you're just going to see SMART continue to be a bigger part of the community in the future. But I can say that just point blank, and we have to have the sales tax in order to continue to provide service and survive. So I don't think that we can't get enough people on the train that we would be able to break even in the future.
Yeah. And I think this is just going off on a tangent a bit, but one of the things that we've talked about previously is the fact that we're kind of, because of our anti-development stances, we're pulling in workers from further and further away, both via driving in from Lake County. And you mentioned that some of your staff is coming in from the Sacramento area. Yeah, we need to provide ways to them that don't cost us as much as providing automotive mobility does. Question about creating, and I don't know the details of this, but cost of creating at-grade crossings for pedestrians and bikes in North Petaluma River area near the Outlet Mall, and about the diagonal across McDowell that has the slot in the tracks that I've heard a number of biker or cyclists complain about as a hazard.
Yeah, so I don't have any figures with me. I mean, anytime that you're doing a project, a lot of factors go in there, right? So I don't have any figures in front of me that, it's so much a foot or anything like that. Really, you just kind of have to look at each project. So I don't have any figures that I can share there. Anderson Drive, that is one that I'm aware of. Emily, do you have something to add? Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that the specific question here about North McDowell, that crossing is being taken care of as part of the pathway project. So that will be fixed in the next year or so.
Oh, got it. Okay, I thought they were looking for a cost of what that crossing. Okay, good. Thanks, Emily.
Cool. And John pipes in, following up on that, making sure that the bike plan for the city has a crossing in the North River area, and he wants to make sure that happens. And I'm trying to think of what that would be. I think that is related to the Peyron to Water Street extension.
Probably so. And then Anderson, that's one that I'm going to do a site visit on, I don't know if it's later this week or next week, but I do have a visit to that area. I've been out by myself, but I'm going to meet with some officials in San Rafael, take a look at that area and see if there's something we can do there.
Cool. John, it ends that the North River connects to Rainier. I'm trying to think about where. Oh, that's way north. I think you've covered most of that. I'll have to go look at that. Talk a little bit more about the last mile. What problems do other cities have with last miles and like e-bikes and e-scooters and things like that? Are there ways that maybe we can urge the city to help? Are there projects that you know of coming online with bike rental and additional connectivity there?
Yeah, we do have the bike rental, the bike share coming in. We expect that this summer. That was in the slides. So I think that's going to be helpful. I've had those types of things in my past experience. They work well. They're highly used. I will tell you, in Utah, when the scooters came in, it trumped the bicycles. I can tell you that. Everybody loved riding the scooters around. However, you find those scooters everywhere, and so it doesn't come without its challenges. But I think as we think through that first and last mile, this is something when I was in Utah, we talked about it every day. And the challenge that I had there is not so much that the bus didn't support the train. The challenge that you have is that you can generally, with a bus, it can only support one direction. You can either get people to a train or you can get them off of the train, right? And anytime you try to do both, it becomes very ineffective for a lot of people because not everybody's trying to connect to a train. So if you say, and I've done this, I've made this mistake, I said, okay, we're going to have a 10-minute dwell. We're going to get there 5 minutes before the train departs, and then we're going to stay 5 minutes to allow people to transfer. But then you have a bus of 25 people on there that are angry because they're sitting in a parking lot. So there's always challenges. First and last mile is difficult for everybody. But I do think it's especially difficult for us, just like where some of our stations are located. And we're going to look at several different things. Emily and I have brainstorming sessions all the time, talking about it. I think one way to do it is with traditional bus, and having those schedules better aligned. I think another way of doing it is, with the bicycles and potentially scooters and things like that. And then I think that there's a step beyond that of maybe something that's a little more innovative, something like an on-demand microtransit style project, I think could potentially work well in some of our areas. And so we're exploring all of those things right now. And I guess I could say everything's on the table at this point, but we're looking at these areas. Emily's done a tremendous job, with this schedule. Not only did she improve and provide more connections to the Larkspur Ferry, but she also improved numerous bus connections with this schedule change. And she's working with her counterparts, to be able to do that. And so we've done some good things, but we do realize we have a lot more things to do to get to where we want to be.
We have, I think Ben came in a little bit late because he's asking about the East Petaluma station. And you mentioned that you were optimistic about that happening in the 2023, 2024 kind of timeline. And that you don't have much more to add to that other than that.
No, we'll hear in June of whether or not we got the grant. And again, I don't have any intel. It's just a feeling, but I just feel good. I think we're highly competitive for that grant. So I'm hopeful that I'll be able to announce good news in June.
Cool. How about any kind of changes or progress or things SMART can do to help and work with the city of Petaluma on getting the downtown Petaluma station area developed in a more interesting way that serves everybody better than a gravel parking lot?
Right. So I met with Peggy Flynn, the city manager, probably, I think it was last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. Anyway, we had this conversation and she was really excited about it. And we, said, hey, let's work on this. And she agreed. So I feel like she's excited about, working towards the development there. We're obviously supportive of it. And so, lots of talks still have to happen, but I can tell you, she was excited about it and wants to partner and try to figure that out. So I think good things could happen there as well.
Cool. Yeah, I know one of the things when the previous plans came together and then fell through, it seemed like there were some real boneheaded things about connection into the smart property. And I know you expressed when we talked earlier, expressed the opinion that there were better things smart could do for that. And I was like, yes, Eddy gets it. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have quite a bit of experience with transit-oriented development. In Utah, if you do any Google searching at all, talking about TODs, you're going to see an example from Salt Lake City area. It's something that's really been a big deal there. There's been a huge investment in the railroad there, and there's been lots and lots of development that's happened around that railroad. And I've seen different types of development. I've seen those areas where they just develop where it's just it's an office building and it works great, right? People get off the train, they go to work, they come out the end of the day. eBay is set up like that. Down in the southern part, they've got some transit-oriented development, a lot of office buildings. You have things like Adobe and American Express, these huge employers. But the ones that, for me, that really seem to work well are the ones that are vibrant. There's things to do, right? It's not just, you don't just live there, you don't just work there, but it's multi-use, lots of different things going on, and you can kind of live, work, and play kind of right in that same area. My son, he lives in Utah, he lives in downtown Salt Lake City. He lives in an area very much like this. He can walk out of his apartment, walk across the parking lot, he can walk onto the platform of the commuter rail. He could connect to a bus right there, or he can go up an escalator and connect a light rail and go downtown. So he can do anything that he wants from right there. And he works in the downtown area. He doesn't have a car. He just moves around on transit. And so, but why do they choose to live there? It's because there's so many other things to do right there. It's, again, they don't have to travel far. And so those are the ones that I've seen, really just be really change a community. One that I like to share with everybody is Farmington, Utah. I wouldn't call it a traditional TOD, right? Because there's some things there that's a pretty large parking lot for a shopping center that I don't think is TOD like. But what I can tell you is that I watched a train station be built in the middle of a marshy field. And then I watched this tremendous development happen around it. The first thing was like a little strip mall, and then this huge outdoor, high-end, beautiful outdoor mall went in. Then apartment complexes went up all around it. Housing went up, a hospital went in, high-rise office buildings. Just you name it, a Cabela's went in, restaurants, all of these things, hotels. There's even a Mercedes dealership there now. And all these things just popped out of the ground once that the rail station was there. So that was something that was really cool to see. And so this is a side of town of Farmington, Utah, that didn't even exist. And now it's a whole new part of town over there. And it's very vibrant. It's very much a destination. People ride the train in just to go there and hang out and have dinner and things like that. So it's really good. And the people that live there, of course, they have everything that they need. And so I love Petaluma. My wife and I, we spend our leisure time a lot of times in Petaluma. And so I think something, like that could be good. But I always like to say this, cities will decide how cities want to develop. That's not something that I'm going to drive. But if we do have a development there someday, number one, I want to make sure that the connectivity piece is there. Not only is it a good development, and I think this is what I mentioned to you, Dan, I want to see a bus path that goes in between the train and the development so that, there's easy connections to and from, and transit is very much a part of the development, that transit-oriented development. Make sure transit comes first.
I think that I just wanted to emphasize that when we talk about how we're going to build out the our side of this, the
Mhm.
Petaluma side of this. You said leaves his apartment, walks across the parking lot to the
Right.
station. Sure would be nice if we can not put the parking in between things as we go forward.
Right. And when I say parking lot, I need to be very clear. It's one lane of parking, and then it's a parking road almost that goes in there that you can park on both sides. So the parking, the only parking they have in his is it's part of the complex, right? Goes up and it's like on the side. So it's like a tiered parking area. So yeah, you don't see much of that.
Yeah, and obviously
Mm.
structured parking
Yeah.
costs lots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Question in the private messages, can we talk about the downtown trolley? Which I think has two parts. One, you talked about kind of the cuteness of a circulator bus that has the trolley vibe. And then, is there any hope for the pier or for the trestle?
So I'm not going to talk about the trolley because I think that that's not that the reason I'm not going to talk about it. I think it's an idea, right? I think there's you know, but I'm not going to talk about it because that's not something that we would ever provide. That would be up to somebody else to do. I think what we really need to focus on is not what type of vehicle something is, but more about the service and that something that circulates downtown that brings people into the city, allows them to get to the restaurants, get to the activities, lets them have a good time, move around the city, and make it back to the train. That's what's important. Not so much the vehicle type, but more about the service.
Cool. We have a question in the chat about smart governance and bringing on an advisory board or board members with transit experience. And I'm mentioning it, but I also think that it's not fair to get you to dish about your bosses. So I don't know if you can actually say anything about that.
No, I'll talk about it. I get that question a lot too. I don't get it enough to add it to the frequently asked questions, but I get it. So the way SMART has, board of directors, 12 members that are appointed to the board. We also have a citizens oversight committee. They more have like a financial type perspective on things. And so I get this question quite a bit about, well, maybe you should have some other kind of advisory council. And that's something that I am thinking about, I am looking into. There's been some that have suggested that should be the Citizens Oversight Committee, the COC. They should have a more broader perspective than just kind of the financial side. And then there's others that think that it needs to be another group. And so, again, I will continue to look into that and work on that as we move forward. But I've heard that message loud and clear. And I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea of it because, the more feedback and help you're getting, the better off you are. So I'm not opposed to it.
Cool. John comes back to micro e-cars as well as bike share, and obviously micro e-cars are developing technology. There's not a lot there, but can you talk a little bit about how bike share happens? What's the partnership? What are the various groups that need to come together to put in a bike share? How does the city work with SMART, work with whoever else on that?
So I can let Emily talk about that a little bit because she knows more of the ins and outs of that. I think that SCTA is leading this effort, right, Emily?
Yeah, it's a joint project between SCTA and TAM in Sonoma and Marin counties. And all of the cities are on the advisory committee. Some funding is coming from the MTC as well. And actually, Jared's on this call as well. He probably knows even more about it than I do for the city of Petaluma. He's the liaison. But there are multiple pods in each city. And you rent the bike and you can take the bike from point A to point B and drop it off. So yeah, we're happy to answer detailed questions on that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. Hi, Jared Hall, Transit Manager for the city. I think you covered the basis of the majority of it, but yeah, it's a 3-year grant pilot program provided with that MTC grant. We're getting close to the start of it. For Petaluma, we're anticipating that the vendor, in this case called Bolt Mobility, will be submitting to the city for their permits within a month or so. And so we're hoping that it'll get off the ground running over the summer within the next couple months. And we're really excited because for Petaluma, we're looking at 7 hubs within the Petaluma area, and people can find out more information on the city website. We actually have a subcommittee of 2 of our committees for pedestrian bike advisory and transit advisory, and we've been talking about it a good amount. But it's going to be a consistent vendor, Bolt, providing bike share up and down the entire smart train corridor. So it's great for one membership. You can get off the train at any of those stations and know there's going to be bike available that you can use. And that's really kind of the first foray, I would say, into addressing kind of the micromobility side of these first and final mile connections. We want to make sure it's successful and it goes well. And then if so, maybe add scooters, other micro vehicles like we've seen in some of the comments, and of course some shuttles and connectors, as Eddie has already alluded to.
Cool. John adds that there will be a presentation on micromobility for the Climate Action Commission tomorrow.
Oh, cool.
Want to tune into that. I think one that is personal to me, and then one that just came in the direct messages. The direct message questions notes that riders can't take e-bikes on the train, and last mile options are, as we've noted, arduous. Can Smart lift the limitations on bike lockers so that we could lock bikes at stations overnight, or lock outside of lockers maybe? Although I'd be really hesitant to do that at downtown Petaluma, but.
So e-bikes are allowed on the trains at this time. In terms of the bike lockers, that's probably a limitation put on by the bike locker company, not by Smart. I have to look into that. I know you pay on an hourly basis, something like 5 cents per hour. But beyond that, I'm not sure if there's a 24-hour limitation, but I can look into that.
Yeah, let's take note of that one. Let's dig into that and see what the overnight issue is. That's not a bad suggestion.
Cool. And then but it's also good to know that in fact you can take the e-bikes on the train.
For sure.
And then the personal question was, my wife and I ride a tandem sometimes, and I don't think there's any way to fit the tandem on the train.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, without knowing the dimensions, and of course I don't have the dimensions memorized. I know we have that one section where the fold-up chairs are. It may be able to fit in there, but I don't know.
All right, I'll have to bring a tape measure next time I ride.
Well, yeah, let's measure it. I mean, if you want to send me the measurements of your bike, we could take a look at that just to see.
Okay, well, in the comments, somebody just said he has seen tandems on the train. So, hey, I'm just artificially limiting myself here.
There you go.
Part of the problem we have. You also mentioned earlier litigation slowing pathways, and obviously commenting on ongoing litigation is a total landmine. But maybe talk a little bit more about the breaks or what it takes to put together the pathways. I know that one of the things that in my prep work for this, I read some of the old blog entries on the Greater Marin from 2013 or so about what it would take to double track and what it would take to up service to 15-minute headways in terms of additional passing lines and things like that. And that might, because of different rules about this all gets, sorry, I'm getting into the weeds here.
Yeah.
But because of different rules about sidings versus double tracking, that might actually mean less places available for a parallel path. Sorry, I just rambled off into the weeds and didn't ask a question. Can you go anywhere with that?
I don't know. I will say I like to use the term strategic double tracking. I don't think we're going to see a time where the whole line's going to be double tracked, but I think about doing some modeling and figuring out where we need additional sidings to be able to allow more opportunities for our trains to pass. Anecdotally, talking to staff, most of us believe that additional siding is on the south side of Haystack Bridge. But that's something that we need to study and figure out if that's exactly where it is and what that would look like and what it would need. So of course, as usual, anywhere you need to do double tracking always tends to be a very expensive place to do it. So it's just the way it is.
And also in the comments here, and I'll make sure that we send that off to you later. We have somebody saying that the last mile problem, last couple miles, I think, from the Petaluma KOA to the train, because we have tourists there, is a bit of a challenge. So obviously not something you can do anything about now, but something to put on the wayfinding discussion later.
Yeah, then those are, like I said, we definitely want to hear those challenges. We want to hear, people's things, because that's what we're digging into on a daily basis and trying to find those solutions. And I think that, a lot of times the first time to solving a problem is acknowledging that you have a problem. And we acknowledge that our first and last mile is not where we want it to be. And it's something we're focused and dedicated to improving. And it's not going to be easy.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, one of the challenges with the train is, to my vision, the train isn't about the service it's providing right now. It's how it grows in synergy with the cities around it for the next couple of decades, and what happens in a couple of decades. So that's kind of the vision we have to keep in our heads.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, I have reached kind of a lull in my question queue here. Let me see. Wait, Mary says, am I skipping her question because it's dumb? And can't, while I am scrolling back to try to find Mary's actual question, Nicole asks, can SMART and Golden Gate Transit hold a workshop on the last mile? I'm not sure Golden Gate's the right agency for that, but
well, it could be. I mean, we have some stats on where our folks are connecting to. Emily tracks that information, obviously with Petaluma Transit, Marin Transit, Golden Gate. But we're focused on all those things, and we've talked about getting together. I can tell you, I talk directly to the general managers and talk to them about, opportunities that I see, and we talk through some things. And, without a doubt, I think there's going to be some times that we're going to have to go in with the general managers as well as the planning staff, sit around the table and just kind of share with what each one of us are trying to do and how we can better align. And that's what it's all about, just better alignment.
Cool. And Mary's question, which I did not see in my scroll back, and I'm sorry that I missed it, Mary. The question was, how much does the cost depress ridership? And how far can we go to make it cheaper, and how? And what's the relationship between fare costs and ridership?
I've dealt with this quite a bit. I mean, right now, I think most everybody knows we're offering a 40% discount, right? So it's $1.50 per zone, 5 zones in our system. So if you were to ride all the way from the airport to Larkspur, looking at $7.50. And of course, we have discounts for youth, seniors, and those with persons with disabilities. It's half price of that. So then you're looking at 75 cents a zone. The elasticity of fares is not what everybody always thinks they are, right? You increase fares, you may lose a few riders, but you're not going to lose all of them. You reduce fares, you gain a few riders, but you don't gain sometimes of as much as what you discount. If you do a 40% discount, you don't increase ridership by 40%. It just doesn't work that way, unfortunately. Free tends to bring people out. There's been some talk in the legislature about offering 3 months of free transit. I don't know if folks have heard about that. That's been being talked about a little bit. That's something that I think is interesting. I'd like to see that as a case study, because typically what happens is transit agencies, they'll do a free day, right? They have one free day. Everybody comes out and rides on free day. And guess what happens? Everybody has a bad experience because the trains are overcrowded. They get left because there's no places for bicycles. The people that ride every day hate it because they're like, what are you doing? Why is everybody on here? And so there's those challenges. But what would happen if it was free for 3 months? I don't know. I've never seen that happen. I will tell you, if you want to read about it, Utah Transit Authority did a free February. They called it Free Fare February. Of course, I was here at the time, didn't have anything to do with it, but I read about it. And they saw the biggest bump on their commuter rail. And I think it was on weekends. And I think it was a 159% increase in ridership on Saturdays. So that's interesting, and that's something, they did that for a reason, because they are interested in what would free fare look like. And so anyway, something we'll stay focused on and look at. But like I said, I will tell you this. I think we did prove that paying for parking was a challenge. Reported to the board last week. The board made the decision to suspend parking fees, which is $2 a day, suspend parking fees at the smart-owned parking rides. And every station went up triple-digit percentage. So the smallest one was Larkspur at 159%. And I think it was Petaluma, correct me if I'm wrong, Emily, up 827%. Was it Petaluma? Yeah. Parking went up 827% by suspending the $2 fee. So that's telling.
That's astounding, and I'm kind of bummed because that means I'm not guaranteed that I'm going to have a parking space.
Right, right.
It's now a crapshoot. So, Ben asked, when is the snack bar going to reopen? And you said you were optimistic on that, but didn't have a time frame.
No, that's something we're going to work through, the strategic planning. I'm interested to understand more about this. It's just not something that I've dug in to understand the financials of it. Kind of what I hear, I can't back it up because I haven't dug into it, but I don't know that it was financially sustainable. I don't know that they were necessarily making enough money to stay open. And of course, it's not something that I think that we would augment, but something we need to look at. And then of course I have people from the bicycle community that would like to take that out and create more bicycle parking. So I get it from both directions there. So it's something that we're going to work through. We're going to look at it. We're going to think about maybe some creative ideas of what that could look like. And maybe what we do is, if we decide that it's the right thing to try to put it back in, we put it out to the public and see who wants to run that, and see what it would look like for them. But yeah, it's obviously a challenge. And I think, for somebody to take that on, especially if it's a private entity, right, you're going to need those trains full of people so that they can actually make a go of it.
Almost seems like finding ways to get development so we have coffee shops at the stations might be a better way to do that.
There you go.
One of the things that I've noticed, and Sharon has also noticed in this conversation, is the number of agencies that you have to coordinate with. How does this compare with your previous work in other regions?
I don't think that's a fair comparison, because we were the only game in town, right? So we were truly multimodal. So as the chief operating officer, I had the buses, I had the paratransit, I had the light rail, the commuter rail, everything. Fan pool. There was a lot of things. You have all of those elements, you can solve a lot of problems. You know what I mean? So you have some type of mode that'll fit something. And we even had streetcar there. So, it is different, coming to an area like this, but I knew that coming in. I came to a commuter rail line, it's not a multimodal agency, but where it is just coordinating and working with folks like Jared, right? Working with, the other general managers and the executive directors, and just working on those and understanding what each other's trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish. I've been on the bus side. I spent 5 years of my life running the bus operations. Trust me, I know what it's like when the commuter rails call and say, you've got to do better at this. And I say, well, you don't know the other 47 things I'm trying to do with this bus and the other things we're trying to serve. So I get all of that. And I understand it. So I want to make sure that we're just collaborative and we work through these things. But I think the better we can help each other understand, because in my mind, we are a system. We may be different operators, but we are a system. And people don't really care, in my mind, people don't care if it's SMART, or if it's Petaluma, or if it's Marin Transit, or it's Santa Rosa City Bus, or whatever. They just know that they're taking public transportation and they want to be able to connect on those things. So, it's just all about us working together. I feel like I feel really good about the relationships. I hope everybody else say the same things, but the relationships that I've developed in the short amount of time I've been here, I think are really good and going to pay dividends in the future.
Excellent. And Nicole asks, what's the best way for the public to provide data about their last mile? And would that be helpful to the various transit managers to know how people are getting to SMART? Is there a data collection mechanism for that?
Well, I think that it would be sending it into, they can find our customer comment email address online at SonomaMarinTrain.org. They can go there and send us comments. I mean, we always love to hear feedback. When that information comes in, it gets sent to the appropriate person. In this case, it'd go to Emily, and she would work through that. And, again, that's why I sometimes think that in our area, and again, we got to flush this out, but a lot of times I think microtransit could potentially, an on-demand microtransit could be a big solution for us, because you hear about all these places that people want to go in their last mile, and a lot of times it's all different places. And so it makes it very difficult to do a fixed route that can hit all of those things. And so knowing that we have onesies, twosies going different places, we need to think about a product that could do that. But that's difficult for bus. They need, 25, 30 people going to one place, or at least along one alignment. And
Right.
So that's a real challenge for us. And so as we think through this, I think we have to consider microtransit as a potential solution.
Excellent. Cool. Well, with that, I think we really have run out both out of time and out of questions.
Now we can go watch the basketball game.
Yes, yeah, I noticed Dave has muted his camera, which means he's already. Cool. Thank you very, very much, Eddy and Emily and Jared, but especially Eddy. Ben posts in the comments that the reminder that Smart Board of Directors meetings are held on the first and third Wednesday of each month at 1:30, and members of the public have various options to watch and participate in that, which is probably going pretty deep into all sorts of decisions. Yeah, thank you for all of the vision, and also I think for helping expose some of the complexity that goes into your day-to-day job, because there's really an awful lot of stuff that's getting balanced back and forth into trade-offs that we aren't aware of when we piss and moan about 32-minute schedules and other things like that. So.
Yeah, but we're going to be working on those things. That's our vision, is to get better. So continuous improvement, that's what we're focused on.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Any closing thoughts, or does that kind of cover it?
That covers it for me. Thank you. Appreciate you inviting me to speak tonight.
Excellent.
So
Thank
much,
you.
Eddy.
Oh, thank you.
Interesting. Thanks.
Okay. See you later. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, everybody, for coming.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.